We're rolling.
Okay. So I have been interested in magic for practically my entire life, but I never actually learned how to do a magic trick until right before this speech. And as you can see, I figured it out. By the end of this speech, you will know a little bit about what magicians recommend for beginners, all about the different types of magic, and a little bit about the life of Harry Houdini himself. So, to start things off, I have a list of all of the different types of magic. There is a ton of them, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one. Micro magic is the type of magic that is up close and personal, like a card trick or like vanishing coins. They're usually the easiest to learn, and they take the least amount of practice. Platform magic is the type of magic you see when you go to a state fair and there's a magician up on a stage. There's a moderate amount of seats in the audience, but they're not, famous. They do hard and easy tricks, and they're usually very cool. And their props are slightly bigger than when you're up close in person because the audience is farther away. Stage illusions are the type of magic that is on TV. They're kind of rare, and the magicians are really famous, and there's thousands of people in the audience. Their props are enormous because so many people have to see them. Street magic is the type of magic you'd see when you're walking down the street and a magician comes up to you and shows you a trick. They're usually very skilled because the distance between you two is very small and they have to be very, very good at what they're doing. Escapology is where the magician is locked in handcuffs or small enclosed space and they usually have to escape. Shock magic is very similar to circus magic. So the magician does something crazy with their body and the audience is a little bit scared. Bizarre magic is the type of magic that has a theme to it, such as horror or fantasy, and it's up close and personal. Children's magic is the type that you'd see at an elementary school or a birthday party or a preschool or something similar to that. There's usually volunteers in the audience because children like to be in magic shows. Mentalism is where the magician makes you believe that he can read your mind or he can predict the future or he's going to tell something that's going to happen. It's actually not. It's usually just mathematics that makes it happen, but it seems cool when he does it. Online magic is the type of magic that you see when you're on your own and you're on the computer. Actually, I found a really cool one that if you search for on the web, it's called David Copperfield's Online Card Trick. And if you do that, you're going to be astounded. It's really cool. Theatrical seances are where the magician pretends that he can communicate with spirits, and they're usually fun to watch. Corporate trade show magic is the type of magic that usually promotes like a new product coming out or a conference or a meeting, and it's usually very entertaining. Within the types of magic, there's also a technique called sleight of hand. Sleight of hand is broken up into 7 different techniques. I'm going to tell you a little tiny bit about each one. When a magician palms something, it means that they have something in their hand that you can't see, but it's actually in their hand. Loading something is where you have something set up before you actually do the trick. So if you're doing a card trick, you have to set up the deck before you actually do it. Simulation is when you pretend to do something and you're not actually doing it. Ditching something is when you leave it sneakily. Stealing something is getting something you need sneakily. Switching something is when you have 2 things and you're very sneaky that you switch hands and you show the audience which one you need. Misdirection is when the magician looks at one hand and you all look at one hand too, and the other hand is doing something completely different that's important to the trick. Your brain tells you that since the magician is looking at their hand, there's something exciting going on there, so you should look there too. And the other hand is usually doing something completely different. There's also, magicians all have one thing in common, and that is that they started as beginners. So when you start out doing magic tricks, there is some tricks that magicians recommend for when you're starting. So the first thing is to practice, practice, practice. The more you practice a trick, the more you become accomplished at it, and the audience will be more astounded when you finish it. Also, practice in front of a mirror. If you practice in front of a mirror, you can see exactly what the audience sees. So if you need to be more smooth, or you need to be more sneaky when you're doing a specific move, then you'll know that. And when you're done practicing in front of a mirror, videotape yourself, because that'll give you another perspective. When you're done showing a video camera or a mirror, then you can show like a guardian or a friend or something, and they'll give you critique on how you need to get better, or if you need to just be good and you are great and they give you a look of surprise and you do it right. Also, when you are doing a show for someone, don't repeat the trick, because they are much more likely to figure out how you did it, and then it kind of ruins the trick for them when they figure it out. don't tell the magician how you did it, because that also goes against the magician's code of conduct, and you will not be happy if you break that conduct. One of the most famous magicians of all time was named Harry Houdini. And he actually was born as Eric Wise, and he started performing at the age of 9. He did all sorts of tricks all over the world, and he was also in many movies. His most famous trick was Chinese water torture, which is where the magician has their feet locked in stocks and they're dangling from the ceiling. Their hands are handcuffed together, and they're being slowly lowered into a giant glass tank of water. That doesn't sound so much fun, does it? Actually, some magicians tried to recreate this trick after he died, and they ended up dying themselves. We still don't know how he did his trick. He also did some other tricks, including vanishing elephants and walking through a brick wall. He also escaped from handcuffs and straitjackets. He was obsessed with handcuffs and straitjackets, and he actually believed that you could escape from any handcuff using a small piece of metal. He was very obsessed with handcuffs. Anyway, in conclusion, now you know about the many different types of magic. You also know about techniques of sleight of hand, and finally, you know about Harry Houdini and about the many things that beginners should start with. And as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe once said, magic is believing in yourself. If you can do that, you can do anything.